Thanks for tuning in to Travel Royally Podcast. This is your host, Hayden Moore. We're sponsored by Royal Links Golf Tours, where we create unforgettable golf vacations to the British Isles. You can find us at royallinksgolftours.com. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Travel Royally Podcast. Today, we've got Andrew Cooke. He's a good friend of Royal Links Golf Tours. He's a citizen of Ireland, but lives in England. He runs Golf Tourism England, which is the marketing body that represents the golf tourism industry in England. Andrew Cooke, thank you for being on the podcast with us. How is your day going?
It's going very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it's actually getting a lot busier in England now?
Yeah, thankfully, the golf tourism industry seems to be reigniting now. Obviously, domestically, it's been very busy all through the summer, really. Lots of people have been traveling around England, but obviously far less have been going anywhere overseas. And we've not seen anywhere near as many visitors from the US as we would have done in the past.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to be talking to some of my American friends about potential trips and not just Americans, but Scandinavians and Dutch people. They're probably our three biggest markets, really: America, Scandinavia, and Holland, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's really good to hear from us that business is starting to pick up because, that's what we do. So Golf Tourism England, tell us a little bit about what you do there.
Well, Golf Tourism England was set up because, obviously, we've got a lot of golf courses here in England that are very appealing to overseas visitors, but England didn't really have an organization that coordinated the industry and represented England at some of the big travel shows, and we didn't have anybody really looking for opportunities to promote the country in the way that, say, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales have, and also nobody was really there to approach government about potential funding. So, through conversation with quite a few suppliers or resorts and golf courses and tour operators, it seemed that there was very much an opportunity to create an organization that would perform those functions and actually give some direction to the efforts made to attract people from overseas, particularly overseas. We do extend to actually trying to promote southern regions in England to the north of England, but generally, to begin with, it was set up to attract people from overseas.
I got you. Awesome. So you are a big golfer, correct, yourself?
I don't know. You'd have to define big golfer. I think I love golf and I play a lot. I wouldn't suggest that I'm a really good golfer.
Big golfer doesn't mean good golfer, but
okay, great. Now we understand the definition. Yeah, great.
How did you?
Yes, I am.
How did you decide to get into this golf business? What was the really deciding factor? Did you just kind of have a realization that there's an opportunity for this?
Well, yes, with Golf Tourism England specifically, but my background is that I've been in sports marketing and sponsorship all of my working life, and I've worked in lots of different sports. I worked in rugby and everything from rugby to badminton to Formula One to beach soccer with Eric Cantona, and I've done all sorts of things in sports marketing. But even from the early days, I tended to work in the golf arena quite a bit. One of my early jobs working in golf was part of the team that resurrected the Scottish Open, as part of the team that got Bell's Scotch whiskey to be the sponsor in the early days when it was held at Gleneagles. And don't ask me how long ago that was, because that'll be embarrassing, but it was an awful long time ago. And really, that was one of the first things I did in golf marketing and golf event management. And you can imagine someone who loves his golf, that was what seemed like the perfect job. And I've been in golf marketing, sports sponsorship ever since.
Nice. Awesome. So let's dig into England. What do you think makes England a great destination for links golf trips?
Well, we've got great links courses.
Absolutely.
As you will have seen some of them on television during the Open and maybe one or two other events as well. But And historically, we've even the Ryder Cup has taken place on 1 or 2 links courses as well.
Yep.
So we've got a great history of staging major events at some of the English links courses, most recently, obviously, at Royal St George's. But there are lots and lots of other magnificent links courses that not only would you have not heard of necessarily in the United States, but many people in the UK don't know about.
Yeah. Tell us a couple of those courses that are like kind of diamonds in the rough that people don't really know about, but are, the courses that you want to play.
Well, there's one on the northwest coast, and when I mention the northwest coast, you're immediately going to think about Lytham and Birkdale and Royal Liverpool and Formby and Southport and Ainsdale, all of these magnificent courses on the northwest coast. But there's one that rarely gets mentioned, and it's mainly because I guess it's just that little bit further north, and it's near the Scottish border, and it's called Silith on Soulway. Now, I can tell you that's one of the great links courses in the British Isles. I mean, it's fantastic.
Do you think it kind of gets overlooked by the other courses there?
Well, and one of the reasons it does is because it doesn't have that many courses that close to it. That's why it's a little bit remote. And one of the reasons why people love playing golf in England is because that you can come to an area and there'll be a cluster of 4 or 5 great courses where you can locate yourself at one hotel and you can play all of the courses. Now that's different from Ireland, for instance. I mean, where part of the joy of going on a trip to Ireland is that you travel around the beautiful countryside, and you discover these courses in very remote places, which is wonderful. But what's different with England is that that you can literally park yourself in one place, completely relax, and within 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max, you can get to another great golf course. And then, of course, there's all the infrastructure around that. So when we've just been talking about the Northwest. So if you do go to the Northwest and play the Birkdales and the Lythams and so on, you're on the doorstep of Liverpool, which is a history, which is the city that's got a huge amount of history, the Beatles and and the football and the shopping and everything else. So it's a wonderful place to visit in its own right. But yeah, I mean, I think I love the fact that England's got some of the most wonderful links courses that people haven't heard of. I mean, I could just reel off others, like Gossick on the other side of England, the northeast. You've got places like Seacroft, which is very close to Woodhall Spa, one of the best courses in the world. So people might make plans to go and play Woodhall Spa in Lincolnshire, which is again a little bit of a remote region, and they forget about playing Seacroft, which is this wonderfully charming links on the coast, 25 minutes away from Woodhall Spa. And then of course you've got Kent with the championship courses, Prince's, Royal St Ports, and Royal St George's, but not that far away, you've got a course called Littlestone, which again is a lovely old-fashioned links course. Go a bit further into Sussex, and you've got Rye, which is one of the most traditional courses in England and one of the most wonderfully designed golf courses that you'll ever imagine.
I think a lot of people that are going on trips actually love the idea of having that small course that not many people know about that is still amazing. And you can go to, that's what's great about England, you can go to a city like Liverpool, play 5 championship courses, and then you can go play this amazing course up the road a little bit. And it's really remote. So I love that idea.
And the great thing is you can do that in many different regions in the country. That's one of its attractions. And it really has got an endless supply of fabulous courses. And linked into lots of other things you can do. So again, when you're talking about the American market specifically, we do get a lot of mixed groups, men, coming with their wives, and the wives have a wonderful time as well, because let's say, for instance, they're playing in at Royal St George's and Royal St Ports. I mean, the wives can go and visit Canterbury, which you could spend 3 days in Canterbury and delve deeply into the history of the place. So and see all the sites like the cathedral and the cobbled streets and the lovely places to eat and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give us some advice for some first-time goers, and where do you think their destination should be their first time going into England?
Well, again, it depends on what you're looking for. I mean, if you are looking to play all the top golf courses, the Open Championship roster, if you like, then your first port of call is either going to be Kent or the Northwest.
Yeah.
And people sometimes stay in Liverpool, sometimes people stay in Southport, which has got the best access for the courses. But those two areas, are kind of like bucket list stopovers. So you're playing the very, very top courses in terms of their positioning and their inclusion on the Open roster.
Yeah, we've got a group set up to go play 6 championship courses have played on the Open on, and a Ryder Cup venue. So that roster that week is amazing, and they're all in the same area. It's incredible. So what is your favorite course in England?
Well, I mean, I do love Rye, I must say, but there's another one that I go for sometimes I go for slightly quirky, fun courses.
For sure.
And and what makes a golf course good is different for everybody, right? So the Open Championship courses are Open Championship courses because they've got the space to hold an Open Championship. I mean, that's the first thing you need to be an Open Championship course. So when you talk about some others, like I've mentioned Silith and so on, and Gossick, these places are of the quality they certainly could hold an Open Championship. They're both Open Championship qualifying courses, but they just wouldn't have the infrastructure or the room to be one. So, of course, I mean, all the Open Championship courses we've got are fabulous courses in their own right. But I quite sometimes like, and again, maybe it's because my handicap is not fantastic. Maybe I like the sort of the quirkier, more fun courses like Rye, like maybe somewhere called Royal West Norfolk, which is often referred to as Brancaster, and that's obviously in Norfolk. And that's one that maybe you guys haven't heard of, but is one of the most charming golf courses because it's a beautiful design, it's beautiful scenery, it's got a clubhouse that you just wouldn't believe in terms of how old it is and how quirky it is.
History.
Yeah, and the history of it. And then if the tide comes in, if you're there at the wrong time, you might not get out. So, because the tide comes up so far that it actually can stop people getting out. So it's got loads and loads of character. So I do love that. But I could mention, when put on the spot and say, what's your favorite? I usually go on for 5 minutes and say my favorite in this part of the country is St. Enodoc in
it's funny.
Cornwall.
That's funny because every time I've asked that question to people, they go on like they start naming 5-10 courses, and I'm like, all right, I said name one, but that really
I just don't think that's a fair question to say.
I know, and it really just shows how you can't just pick one course here. There are 10s and 15s of favorite caliber courses that you can't just name it down to one. So another question I ask is what course, if you had to play one course for the rest of your life, what would it be? And that has to narrow it down.
Well, I'm really, really happy with the course I'm a member at, which is St George's Hill in Surrey, and that's Heathland Golf, which is very similar to links golf in many respects. In the Heathland courses are built on sand, so the reaction of the ball on the turf is quite similar. So I do love my home course, and it's very similar to Sunningdale, which is down the road, which would be another candidate. I'm cheating already, aren't I? I mentioned 2. But yeah, I think I love Heathland Golf, and if I was to name, I mean, God, it's very hard to look past Royal Birkdale. I mean, it's a magnificent golf course, and that's wonderful. But I've also, as I say, I've got a soft spot for these places like Royal West Norfolk, and you know what, Ginny, you could put me on loads, and I'd be happy for the rest of it.
Yeah. I can understand wanting to be at your home course and your course that you're a member at, and if you had to be somewhere for the rest of your life, you want to be somewhere where you're familiar and you know the people, you know the place. I understand that. I love that.
Yeah, having said that, it's quite hilly. I mean, it's called St. George's Hill, so it's quite hilly, and as you get older, it becomes quite a physical challenge to actually play the course, because it's designed by Harry Colt, so it's up and down hills, and so I as I get older, I might actually veer towards a slightly flatter course.
So explain the region that your course is at.
Well, it's in what's known as the Surrey Berkshire Sandbelt, and it's a region which is one of the great. I mean, it kind of reminds me a bit of Pinehurst, actually.
Okay.
The Pinehurst region, very, very similar in respect of pine trees and sandy soil and density of great golf together. I mean, there's some absolutely. I mean, some of the best known golf courses in the British Isles are in Surrey. So you've got Sunningdale, you've got Wentworth, where they had the World Match Play. You know, you've got Swinley Forest, which is very well known. St. George's Hill, Walton Heath, where we had a Ryder Cup back in, when was it, 77 or something, with Nicholas and Trevino, and they had one of the great American sides, you know, almost as good as the one you got right now. So we've got all these great courses in a very, very small area, and it's on what's known as a sandbelt. And I guess Melbourne is another place that would be comparable. The Melbourne sandbelt. And obviously, when these golf courses were being built around the turn of the century, you had all these great architects like Harry Coles, like Fowler, like Mackenzie. All of these guys were around at the same time. And of course, this sandy soil with heather and pine trees was absolutely perfect for golf courses. So little wonder that they focused on developing them. And I suppose the proximity to London is a big thing too, because obviously, you know, there's industry around and there's money around and people with ambition to build golf courses. So I think it's easy to understand why, in the same way that Liverpool was a similar place, that the great golf courses have been built around these areas.
So speaking of Ryder Cups, I know you probably tuned in this weekend. What happened? Yep. What happened to your Europeans?
Well, you know, I mean, in short, the best team won. I think you guys have got the most outstanding team at this moment in time. You've got players who are, I mean, Bryson DeChambeau is sort of taking the game to a different level, and his performance was extraordinary. I thought during the event, I just couldn't believe some of the stuff he was doing. To combine that sort of power with the touch that he has as well is amazing. But if you look at the team from top to bottom, I mean, it was crazy good, wasn't it?
It's scary for the years to come. I mean, we got like 4 rookies, and the average age of the team is pretty spectacular.
Combined with that, the European team maybe have 1 or 2 guys coming to the sort of the end of their time, you know, Westwood and Garcia, maybe Coulter, maybe, and Rose, who didn't make the team but probably should have been there. I mean, again, these guys may not be around for that much longer. So
you got hope with Victor Hovland.
Well, he was fabulous, wasn't he? I think he's going to have to bring through a new breed, I think, of young player. But then the final thing, I guess, I would say, I mean, it's certainly not an excuse, but the final thing I would say is that the European team has always fed off the crowd. It's always fed off the fantastic support that they get at these events. And to be out there with you hostile Americans giving them a hard time, you know, it must have been quite tough, you know, because particularly, can you imagine, no support, you know, an American team that was playing just so fantastic. I mean, I think that was really tough.
I was actually on the golf course yesterday with a lady from England, and she was talking about how she was talking about the same thing. Like, that is such a tough environment. And to add on to that, COVID's not letting people travel from England to America. They're just not going to do it. So especially this Ryder Cup is tough because it is just Americans and maybe a couple Europeans that were able to make the trip or already live over here. So that's got to be a tough environment, and I completely agree.
Well, I mean, the Ryder Cup, I mean, you can see from the, I mean, we never had big stands around the first tee in the past, and that's all because of the Ryder Cup. And now the first tee has become a big thing, and it's all about the fans, and it's all about the support that you have. And I think someone like, Ian Poulter, has got a decent record as a golfer, but he's got an amazing record as a Ryder Cup player. But I think he in particular is really motivated by the fans. I mean, he loves it more than anything because of the interaction with the crowd and the adrenaline, and he just feeds off that and does things that he doesn't do in normal life. So I think we've got to be fair and say that must have been a factor. But I certainly would not want to make any excuses, because I just think the American team is first class. I mean,
I think that's just what it comes down to.
Beyond first class. I mean, just exceptional, I think.
Well, Harrington had some great ideas to get the crowd going. Did you see the cheeseheads? Do you know what that means?
I did, yeah, I did.
Yeah, so those Wisconsians, they loved that, and they were getting the crowd going all day, every day. So I love that I loved that. That was great. That was great.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the great events, isn't it? And we're so lucky to be able to witness it every 2 years. And I think it's just going from strength to strength. And I think America winning is no bad thing. And I think in many ways for the event to be successful, I mean, it's almost great to see it shared out every now and again, because it just builds the excitement. I mean, to go into a Ryder Cup. I mean, this Ryder Cup, I think, obviously, the Americans were favourites. There's no doubt. I mean, home advantage, great players, everything else. But generally, when you go into a Ryder Cup, there is more than enough doubt as to who's going to win. It's always a 50-50. So I think the event is in a very strong place.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Americans and how they helped the industry kind of get going in the British Isles. When do you think that happened, and how pivotal was it that Americans started to take their golf trips to the British Isles?
Well, it's been key, and I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, generally, when Americans come to the British Isles, they're going to be visiting Scotland first or second, depending on relations they may have. They'll go to Scotland first or Ireland first, and then they'll go to Scotland or Ireland second.
Yeah.
I think our challenge at GTE is to try and make sure that, on the third trip, they come to England. They don't go back to Scotland for a second trip, and they don't go back to Ireland for a second trip. They come to England. Because believe me, the temptation to go for a second trip in Scotland and a second trip in Ireland is really there. I mean, it's, there are some wonderful places to play golf in those countries as well. So I'm not, and by the way, I mean, yes, I'm promoting, England as a destination, but I'm a huge fan of British golf generally. I mean, and I'd be crazy not to be. I mean, it'd be crazy to say that we were better or worse, or Scotland was better or worse than anybody else, and that's just not the case. The British Isles and Ireland in its entirety is laden with magnificent golf. Yeah. So in fact, in going back to your going back to your question about where would you want to play for the rest of your life, it'd be the British Isles, and that's even with all the great courses you guys have got.
Yep.
And it's even with the quality of Whistling Straits, which looked outrageously good on television.
It looked amazing.
I would still say the British Isles, and I'd say that for the incredible variety, the beauty of the landscapes, and the variety we'll come on to, but there's all sorts of different types of golf you can play here, and that's one of the wonderful things, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing for us as well at Royal Links. We love promoting the England as a destination because of, this next year is going to be really busy, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, Scotland's booked up, we can't go. Like, no, there is a fantastic destination in England that have available tee times, and that's where you want to be.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple groups actually that are agreed and ready to go to England and play these championship courses, and I think they're going to really enjoy it. Really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, we have to be honest and say that we've been guilty of not promoting ourselves as hard as Scotland and Ireland, and I'm very often it's because a lot of the golf courses are very busy anyway, and they've got they're well run, they've got big memberships, and don't necessarily need visitors, and not particularly for a while weren't set up for visitors. And I think we've improved dramatically on that. I think English golf clubs are very welcoming now, and always have been. But I mean, we just haven't put ourselves out there to attract visitors like we are now. But I can absolutely assure you that your guests will come away and think they've played some magnificent courses. I mean, so yeah, I look forward to welcoming them over here if I can. Yeah.
So I know England compared to Scotland and Ireland, the main thing, to my knowledge, is how remote and I guess more, I wouldn't want to say high class, but more just professional. What else do you think sets England apart from Scotland and Ireland?
Well, I think we've touched on this already. I mean, it's the clusters. I mean, Scotland have got a few, obviously, but there's clusters. It's the infrastructure. It's the ease of travel. It's the other things that you can do outside the golf. Not all golfers are that concerned about that particularly. I mean, they just want to focus on their golf. I understand, but there's an awful lot of other things that you could potentially do when you're in any English sort of location. And again, I think I'd probably come back to the variety. I mean, you've got a variety of top class championship courses, and then you can play something that you may not have heard of, but you'll be blown away by. You'll think this is the most wonderful little course, and I've never heard of it. So, and then obviously we've got lots of restaurants, we've got lots of great wine, we've got clubhouses. Funnily enough, we did an interview once, I think it was at the BMW Championship, and we asked the players this exact question: and what's special about golf in England? You'd be amazed at how many of them said the clubhouses, because they're just steep in history. So, and Americans love coming to Sunningdale, and when they come to Sunningdale, all they have to do is wander around the clubhouse, and they'll realize that this is one of Bobby Jones's courses that he particularly loved. So and most clubhouses in England will have an American connection. So, and if your guests are willing to take a little bit of time to explore that, they will get a great deal of satisfaction from it, I think.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, a big thing you touched on earlier about the extracurricular activities that you can do in England, and that's what Royal Links is big on. You don't want to just play golf every day, twice a day. You need to experience the country, and I think that England has a lot of country to offer in history, and so that's a lot of what we promote as well. So it morphs pretty well with that. So what would be your favorite off-course activity in, well, I'm going to name off a couple cities, but like Lancashire.
Well, Lancashire is where you would associate the sort of northwest with, and you would think of, when you think of Lancashire, you think of Manchester, you think of, well, Liverpool is technically it's Merseyside, so not necessarily Lancashire, but it's pretty much that's where we're talking about, the northwest. So I think when you're thinking about the northwest, you would have to think about music because of the Beatles. And Liverpool has got many sort of shrines to the Beatles, and lots of, they've got a music museum, and they've got the cavern where the Beatles were discovered. And I know a lot of guests going up to that area stay in the Hard Day's Night Hotel, which is a hotel devoted to the Beatles, or so I think you would have to say music is something you think of when you think of Liverpool. I'm going to say you have to think of football as well, because they've got two great football clubs, even though I'm a Manchester United supporter, which is also in Lancashire, obviously. And I'm a big Manchester United fan, and they are the best team in England, obviously. People may argue with that, but yeah, no, football is a massive part of the culture up in that part of the world. So those two things, football, and we have had guests coming across on many occasions going to a Premiership football game and playing golf.
No, we encourage that. A lot of people are like the idea of going to a football game. You see it on TV, you see how amazing it is and how crowded and how loud and all the chants, and you really just want to be a part of it. What about Cornwall?
Well, Cornwall, okay, so Cornwall is scenically is absolutely stunning. So it's
on the west coast, correct?
Southwest, yeah.
Southwest,
and most of it is a peninsula going out into the sea. And it sort of stretches out, going west, and you've got counties like Cornwall and Devon and Dorset and Somerset and so on.
A lot of great courses down there as well.
Some magnificent courses. I mean, we've got a links course in Devon called Saunton. They've got two courses there. It's one of the few two course venues we've got in as far as links clubs are concerned. Both magnificent, and it has been mentioned as an Open Championship course many times, but they just wouldn't have the infrastructure in terms of hotels and transport links and everything else. But a magnificent golf course. So I'm back on the golf. You wanted to know non-golf. So there it's about the scenery. But the other great thing about Devon and Cornwall is it's become a destination for people who love their food and great restaurants. So you know about Rick Stein, who's a world famous chef. So many chefs have set up in that part of the world that again it's a major part of what you would do. You would make sure that you booked a table and made sure you had that on your itinerary, that you would eat, at seafood restaurants, which is the big speciality down there. You would eat at seafood restaurants and make sure you get a table, which is not easy, by the way, because they're hugely popular. But to get a table at one of those restaurants is a huge experience in its own right. And you definitely want to do that.
People love to hear that. I love hearing an area has great food because I'm a food lover. I think a lot of people will agree.
We know that golfers, lots and lots of golfers love their food and wine. So, this is really somewhere they're gonna love very much. And the courses are great. St Enedog, Revose, Saunton, Burnham and Barrow, these sort of places, Royal North Devon. These are great courses. And then you've got others. There's another little one down there called Perranporth, which I don't know whether you've ever heard of golfatlas.com, but it's where all the golf architects contribute their thoughts and about various courses. And Perranporth is one of the courses that's listed in England as being of special interest because it's just got the most extraordinary design, and it's a wonderful links course with amazing views.
We could go all day talking about cities and the off-course activities, and then naming the links and courses around it. There's no ending on, all right, talk about this city, and there's this course. That's the great thing about the British Isles. Like, there are courses everywhere that you want to play. There's not a course that you're going to go to and say, this isn't beautiful. Any links course is going to have amazing views, and that's what we love about it. And then Kent, you've talked a little bit about Kent already, but
well, Kent, I mentioned Canterbury, which is an obvious one because they've got the most, superb cathedral there. But Kent is known as the Garden of England, and it's known as the Garden of England because it's got tons of fresh produce and it's got vineyards and we make good wine here. We don't get much credit for making good wine, but we do. And then it's also got lots of castles. A visit to Hever Castle is an amazing experience. It's like a centuries old and stunningly beautiful, and it's got its own gardens within the grounds, and that's a day trip for sure. And again, we talked about what wives might do if they were coming and they were non-playing wives. Let's say that. I mean, this would be a wonderful trip to do. So I think of fresh produce. I mean, I don't know whether you're aware that if you play Royal St George's, you can actually eat raw asparagus off the golf course.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little known fact outside, but you can actually eat asparagus.
That is,
and it tastes so much better than anything you buy in the shops. But you can actually you can look. Oh, there's a little asparagus plant. And you can go over and pick it and eat it.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a little turn here. We're talking about football a little bit. You mentioned rugby earlier, and I know you're a rugby guy. So who's your team?
Well, what I should say is that I'm a football guy, and the reason I managed to make the team when I was 10 years of age at a school called Blackrock College in Dublin, which is to say that Blackrock College is a passionate rugby school would be understating it. I would call it a fanatical rugby school.
Yeah.
And they've produced many Irish rugby internationals there. I mean, every year there's always about 3 or 4 that come from Blackrock. And I turned up my dad worked for an American bank. Interesting. He worked for Citibank, and he got transferred around. So hence why I was actually born here in England. And then when I was 2, we went to Ireland. And then when I was 8, we went to Amsterdam. And in Amsterdam is where I learned how to play football. And as you know, they're technically very good, and they teach you very well how to play. So they taught me how to be 2-footed from the age of 8. I had to focus on becoming good at kicking the ball with my left foot.
Yeah.
So when I turned up at Blackrock College, in a school where even at 10 years of age, they had been trained to be really good players.
Yeah.
It turned out that there was one position which they hadn't filled, and it's a position called hooker, which is not a desirable position on the field. Yeah. It's in what we call the front row, and you have to be quite big and strong, and everything to play that. And I wasn't at the time particularly big and strong, but what I was someone who could kick and catch and run fast and do all those things. Not that fast, but I ran reasonably fast. So I got put into that position from a very young age, and just carried on my whole life, despite a number of attempts to move into other positions like fly half, which is the glamour position in rugby, and fullback, and a number of other positions I tried to get myself into, but because I used to be a good kicker as well, I used to kick goals. But anyway, I stuck at it, and then I joined a wonderful rugby club local to me called Isha Rugby Club, and from there I went up to London Irish Rugby Club, which is a sort of a top class club, and had about 5 seasons there, which was superb. And I guess so. In answer to your question, I guess the team I support most is probably the 2 teams I played for again, so Isha and London Irish. Yeah. But my real passion is seeing the Irish team play. I mean, I for such a small country, they achieve incredible things, with a very small pool of people to select from, and they produce wonderful players, and so I would say, my real, for watching rugby, my real passion is the Irish national rugby team.
And the World Cup for rugby is called what?
The Rugby World Cup.
Yeah. Rugby World Cup, and that is a big deal. I went.
Yeah.
And how often does that occur?
Every 4 years.
Every 4 years, and I see it on TV. It takes over ESPN. I'm like, wow, all right, this is a big deal. We're seeing it here in Alabama and Georgia, and watching these rugby guys just completely demolish each other. It is actually really cool to see.
Well, one of my great experiences in life, was when I played for Isha when I was only 19. Yeah. And you can imagine when I tell you where we went, how much fun that was. But when I was 19, Isha Rugby Club decided to go on tour to California.
Oh.
and we played 6 matches in California. And we started off playing in San Francisco, and then we went to Sacramento, and then we went to Carmel, and Monterey, and then we went
against
to
American teams.
Yeah, against American teams. I
Wow.
think one of them was pretty much the American side actually at the time.
Yeah.
Because obviously, as you know, American rugby's got a lot better as time has gone on. But and this side, I don't think it wasn't the American national side, but I think they would call the Penguins or something, which is maybe the California state side. I can't remember now. But we had the time of our lives, and that's one of the wonderful things about rugby and the tradition of rugby is that they do go on tours, and as a 19-year-old, and there were 4 of us or 5 of us that were 19 at the time. What an experience! But we played some great rugby. I mean, it was tough rugby because we had a lot. You played against some of these guys that were ex-American footballers, who didn't, in some cases, didn't fully understand the rules of rugby. So we're still putting in tackles after the whistle had gone, which hurt. Actually,
oh, sure. I played football. I know those tackles after the whistle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think they weren't deliberately trying to tackle after the whistle. It's just that, as you know, in American football, if you commit yourself to a tackle, I mean, you're not stopping, are you? I mean, the hits were so hard that, you know.
Experience as a quarterback, I have experienced D linemen who are 310, 15 pounds come right at me. And once they start tackling me, there's no stopping that. So you're getting 300 pounds landing on top of you, and there's just nothing you can do. Even if a whistle happens and they're right there in front of my face, it's nearly impossible to stop that from completely, picking you apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, let's wrap it up and talk about the English culture and what Americans can expect when they arrive in England.
Well, I think we've touched on a bit of that already. I mean, in terms of all the different things you might encounter on a golf trip. I mean, I think I always come back to history in many respects because there's so much history here, and so many different things you can do while you're in England. I think you'll find the welcome it'll be different from Scotland for sure, and it'll be different from Ireland, and slightly different from Wales. All of these countries have got their own unique personality and everything else. And again, I would even go further than this and say that depending on what part of the country you go to, you'll get a different welcome because the welcome you might get in the northwest will be different from the one you would get down in Kent, for instance, or Surrey. And the accents you'll get will be different, which might prove a challenge to you guys because we do have a wide range of accents here as well, which you'll know about in Scotland and Ireland and so on, which is very similar. So I think, but again, as I said, I mean, you tend to come back to the history because there's just so much to absorb on that front that again. And I'm not just talking about the history of golf. I'm talking about history generally, and there are so many fantastic things to see that you really probably need to do a bit of research and actually decide what it is that you individually want to actually go and see yourself before you just arrive here, because you'll miss out on an awful lot if you just do that.
Yeah, I got you. So I heard a quote, famous quote. And it said that Scotland is where golf was born, but England is where golf became fashionable. How did golf spread from Scotland to England, and what role do you think England played in golf becoming a global sport?
Okay, I mean, I'll have to be careful what I say in terms of talking about the empire and various things, but obviously, I think the history of how it came down. I think Scottish soldiers that were fighting in various wars took the game and brought it down south, and not just down south, but to other colonies at the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if you go to somewhere like India, you'll find that most of the courses out there were built, or the older ones were certainly built by the English. And again, you'll find that in many other places in the world, actually, even Argentina and and various places. So I mean, how it actually got from Scotland into England, I'm not sure, but I would say a lot of it had to do with industrialization. And again, we touched on this earlier. That sort of wealthy people of the day discovered golf and had the money to actually expand the game and build golf courses and make it available to more people. So I'm sure that had something to do with it. Money is at the root of most things, I think, in many cases.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Particularly when it comes to golf, because you need a lot of money to actually build one of these courses. Yeah. So I would guess that would certainly have something to do with it. And then, it would become fashionable because fashionable people would start playing it, and we did build an awful lot of courses at the turn of the century around London, which is a fashionable city, and I'm kind of guessing, because I mean I don't know exactly, but I would imagine that's how it became very fashionable down here.
Yeah, unfortunately, everything revolves around money, and it is what it is. All right, Andrew, thank you so much. This was amazing. I've got one more segment for you. It's called Rapid Links. I'm just gonna pop some questions. First thing comes to your head, say it out loud. All right, you ready?
Okay.
All right. Favorite European golfer?
It's got to be Rory.
All right.
I'll tell you why. Because I watched him practice once at the BMW Championship.
Yeah, that's probably amazing.
And he was hitting a long iron, and I just thought I've never seen anything more beautiful in my life in terms of the rhythm and the power and the ease at which he was doing it. And I know he's struggling a little bit, but the thing I want to see in golf more than anything else is see him get his final major and become a Grand Slam champion. And,
he's getting back into his form.
Yeah, and it would give me so much joy to see him win the Masters. Really would. So I'd have to say him. There are loads of guys I really like, but I mean, I think just to see him win that Masters would be something.
Yeah. All right. Favorite American golfer?
My favorite, I don't know how popular he is in America and whatever, but and he seems to be fighting with Bryson the whole time, but I love Brooks. The reason it's not about his personality, but he just comes across to me as a gladiator. He just looks like he wants to fight, and he's a magnificent player. Again, so beautifully natural, isn't he? I mean, he's just such a lovely player.
Yeah.
But he just looks like a tough guy.
That's an interesting one. I was not expecting that, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm just, I'm pulling one. I mean, I could have said Colin Morikawa, because I think he's the coolest man in town, and I think
how young he is, and beautiful, how calm and collected.
Yeah.
Well, that just created another Rapid Links question for me. Brooks or DeChambeau?
Well, yeah. I mean, see, on that basis, I would have to back up my first statement and say Brooks. But I mean, I was so impressed with DeChambeau at the Ryder Cup. I mean, just the skills the guy's got, and I've got a huge amount of respect for the fact that he's willing to just push the boundaries, and he's willing to put on a ton of weight and build up muscle. And from an athleticism point of view,
could you imagine?
It's amazing.
Could you imagine them having a singles match? How interesting and fun that would be.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it? I mean, it would just be, and that's part of why I'm kind of fascinated by both of them in many respects, is because they're, I mean, I think if I told you in my day, my favorite actors in the United States were Clint Eastwood and Steve McQueen and those sort of guys. I mean, they're kind of those boys, aren't they? They're the tough, no nonsense, men of few words, and I just I just like all that. I like that.
Have you seen the Capital One matches?
Capital One.
Yeah, the Capital One versus matches where Phil Mickelson and Bryson DeChambeau played with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. No.
They should do it with DeChambeau and Koepka, and that would be one to watch. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
All right, next question. We're kind of we're getting away from the rabid links. What is your mid-round beverage?
Okay, well, I mean, if what I'm gonna say, I mean, some people may say you're lying because I mean, after I played in the Pro-Am a few days ago where they had drink stations at on 6 of the holes.
Yeah,
alcoholic drinks at every single one. And it worked quite well, actually. I performed quite well as a result. But my normal drink at the halfway hut is water.
Water.
A big pint of water, yeah.
Okay. Well, you gotta stay hydrated, of course. So
sorry?
You gotta stay hydrated. So
yeah, but that's only because I normally play in the morning, and it's usually around about 11 o'clock when I'm having this first drink, and it's usually with a view to protecting myself to what's to come later.
Yeah. So that's the next question. What's your post-round beverage?
Well, what does it start with, or what does it finish with?
Starts when you go into the clubhouse.
I might have a pint of refreshing ale.
Okay.
Which is not lager. It's a sort of it's beer. It's an ale.
Yeah, I got you. All right, you're just off the green on a links course. You chipping or putting?
That is the easiest question of this.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I'm putting every time.
Which is funny because a lot of Americans are like, "Oh, I'm chipping," but in links golf, you can be 50 yards away and putt it.
If any of my friends see this, they'll be in hysterics right now because I'm well known for not having a great short game, and it's my downfall actually. I mean, I think I could be I could certainly be a better handicap than I am now if it wasn't for my chipping. But I get the putter out pretty much every opportunity I can.
In my caddying days, my biggest thing is they're asking me, should I chip this? And I'm like, 9 times out of 10, you're going to putt this closer than you chip it. So you need to putt it no matter what. So, and it usually comes out correct. All right. Would you rather have a 250-yard par 4 or a 100-yard par 3?
Well, St. George's Hill, where I'm a member, has both of those. It's got a really, really short but incredibly precarious little par 3, which is a stunning golf hole, a magnificent golf hole. But we've also got a 264-yard par 4, which is, to me, one of the toughest holes on the course. Because if you don't hit the green, or you're into the wind, or you're just not long enough to get on the green, your second shot is so hard that it can be. I mean, it's a birdie chance, you have to say, because it's 264 yards. But I've seen more 5s and 6s there than I've seen birdies. That's for sure.
So you taking the par 3 then?
So I'm going to go. I think only because I'm just thinking. I'm probably in my mind. I'm just thinking of the 2 holes that we've got. I think the par 4 that we've got is magnificent, and I just think it's a wonderful challenge. Of obviously you've got to hit a good drive, and then you've got another really difficult shot. Yeah,
I love the tee shot for a par 4 that's drivable. It just brings excitement,
Yeah.
All right. Last question. When I come to England to visit, what is the first course you're taking me to?
Well, I mean, you'll land in Heathrow, so you won't have far to go to come and be my guest at St. George's Hills.
That's what I was expecting. Expecting. Can't wait. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on. This was a great time. I hope a lot of people get a lot of good information on English golf. And till next time, thanks for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thanks again to everyone for tuning in to Travel Rolly Podcast. I hope you're enjoying it. I know I am. If you are, and you're listening in from YouTube, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening in from the podcast platforms, go ahead and hit the follow button. Travel Rolly Podcast is going to be coming out every Wednesday, so be ready for it, and I'll see you then.